My daughter ripped my phone from my hands and slammed it onto the marble floor of our penthouse. With a voice full of contempt, she said, "You won't need this anymore. I'll decide what's best for you." The screen shattered into a spiderweb of cracks, much like my heart had over the past few years. I stared at Camilla, barely recognizing the young woman who stood before me in her designer outfit. At 32, she had her father's sharp features and my stubborn chin. But something in her eyes had changed, hardened. When had my sweet little girl become this controlling stranger? The MBA from Wharton hadn't just given her business skills. It had given her the arrogance to believe she could manage my life better than I could. Mom, are you even listening? This is exactly why Dad and I need to manage everything for you. You're getting worse, she sighed dramatically, bending down to pick up the broken phone with her manicured nails. Her Hermès bracelet caught the light from our floor-to-ceiling windows. I didn't respond. What was the point? For the past year, since Vincent, my husband of 30 years, had convinced Camilla I was declining mentally. They'd systematically isolated me from friends, taken control of my finances, and monitored my every move, all while I watched, silent and increasingly desperate. They'd even changed the security codes to our penthouse, making me feel like a prisoner in my own home. "We're doing this because we love you," Camilla continued, her voice softening slightly. "Dad says your paranoia and forgetfulness are getting worse. You need us." The words stung because I remembered a time when she would have defended me against anyone, even her father. But Vincent had always been persuasive. As the city's most respected private banker, people trusted him implicitly, including our daughter, including me, until I found those transactions. "I need to rest," I said quietly, my hands shaking slightly. "I think I'll lie down." Camilla's expression relaxed. "Good idea. Dad will be home late tonight. Some emergency with the Patterson accounts. I'll check on you before I leave for dinner with Adrian." Adrian, her fiancé, another financial advisor who worked for Vincent's firm. I'd met him 3 times, and each time something about his easy compliance with Camilla's stories about my condition made me uneasy. His expensive suits and calculated charm reminded me too much of Vincent when we first met. I retreated to my bedroom, the one place they still allowed me some privacy, though I suspected cameras had been installed behind the original Monet hanging on my wall. I closed the door and sat at the edge of my bed, hands pressed against my face. At 55, I wasn't young anymore, but I wasn't losing my mind either. The mental decline they insisted I was experiencing was their creation, a careful fabrication that had begun shortly after I'd questioned Vincent about strange withdrawals from our joint accounts and my real estate portfolio. "Investment opportunities," he'd explained dismissively. "Nothing you need to worry about, Marianne." But I had worried. I'd always managed our household finances and my property investments while Vincent handled the private banking clients. Those withdrawals, $50,000 here, $75,000 there, were unlike anything I'd seen in our 30 years together. When I'd pressed for details, showing him the statements, his face had darkened momentarily before softening into concern. "Honey, we discussed this last month. Don't you remember? The doctor said these memory lapses might happen, but we hadn't discussed it. And I hadn't seen any doctors. That was the beginning. Small comments about my forgetfulness. Missed appointments I was certain I hadn't made. Keys and documents moved from where I'd placed them. Vincent's concerned discussions with friends and family about my episodes. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. He'd convinced our daughter, our friends, even my sister Vivian, who lived across the country. My attempts to explain were dismissed as confusion or paranoia, further evidence of my decline. I reached under my mattress and pulled out the small notebook I'd been keeping. Dates, conversations, bank statements I'd managed to photograph before Vincent locked me out of the accounts. My evidence that no one would believe. The irony wasn't lost on me that I, who had earned my PhD in art history and completed business school at night, was being treated like I couldn't understand basic financial concepts. The doorbell rang, startling me. I quickly returned the notebook to its hiding place and listened. "Mrs. Marianne isn't accepting visitors," I heard Camilla say firmly. "I understand, but I'm not here to see Marianne. I'm delivering these financial documents for Vincent," a woman's voice replied. Unfamiliar, professional. "I can take those. I'm sorry, but Mr. Vincent specifically asked that I wait and give them to him personally. Confidential client information." I moved quietly to my bedroom door, opening it just a crack. From the top of the stairs, I could see a tall woman in a crisp business suit standing at our penthouse entrance. a leather portfolio tucked under her arm. Our concierge must have let her up. Well, he won't be home for hours, Camilla said, irritation creeping into her voice. You'll have to come back tomorrow. The woman glanced at her watch. I see. Perhaps I could leave my card then. I can reschedule. As she reached into her pocket, her eyes flicked upward, meeting mine through the narrow opening of my door. There was no change in her expression, but something in her gaze, a momentary sharpness, made me freeze. Here you are, she said, handing Camilla a business card. Please tell your father I'll be in touch. After Camilla closed the door, I retreated back to my bed, heart pounding. Something about that woman seemed oddly familiar, though I was certain we'd never met. 15 minutes later, I heard Camilla's footsteps approaching my door. Mom, I'm heading out to meet Adrian. Dad should be home around 900. There's soup in the fridge if you get hungry. Her voice was gentler now, almost the daughter I remembered. Thank you, sweetheart, I managed, hating the tremor in my voice that she would interpret as another sign of weakness. I listened as she descended the stairs, grabbed her keys from the marble console, and left. The penthouse fell silent, and for the first time in days, I was truly alone. I waited another 10 minutes before moving to my window, watching Camilla's Tesla disappear down the street. Then I pulled out my emergency burner phone. Purchased months ago during a rare, unsupervised trip to the pharmacy, paid for with cash I'd been secretly saving from household money. I had one chance to get this right. Tomorrow everything would change. My fingers shook as I typed out the text message I'd rehearsed countless times in my mind ready. 10 a.m. tomorrow. Bring everything we discussed. I sent it to the only number programmed into the phone, then deleted the message. The next morning, I woke before dawn. I showered and dressed carefully, choosing comfortable clothes and practical shoes. I packed a small bag with essentials and the notebook containing my evidence. At 7:30, I heard Vincent leave for his morning tennis game at the country club, a Saturday ritual he never missed. Camilla wouldn't arrive until around noon. She always slept late on weekends in her luxury apartment downtown. At precisely 9:45, I walked out the front door of the penthouse where I'd lived for 28 years, locking it behind me. I didn't look back. By the time Camilla came to check on me later that day, she would find the note I'd left on my perfectly made bed. When she saw what I had done, I knew panic would set in, not for my safety, but for what was about to be exposed. I sat in the elegant cafe 2 towns over, my hands wrapped around a mug of tea I couldn't bring myself to drink. The morning crowd had thinned, leaving just a few patrons scattered among the tables. At precisely 10 a.m., the bell above the door chimed. The woman from yesterday, the one who had delivered documents to my penthouse, walked in, scanning the room until her eyes found mine. She moved with confidence, sliding into the seat across from me. Marianne, she said, not a question but a confirmation. I'm Rebecca Sinclair. Up close, I could see she was perhaps 10 years younger than me, her dark hair showing only a few strands of silver. Her eyes were sharp, observant. You were at my penthouse yesterday, I said, keeping my voice low. How did you know who I am? Your sister Vivian hired me. She placed a business card on the table. Sinclair Investigations. I nearly knocked over my tea. Vivian, but she believes I'm... She did, Rebecca corrected, until she received this. She slid a sealed envelope across the table. Vivian's handwriting marked it as returned mail. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside was a birthday card I'd sent Vivian 3 months ago, along with a handwritten letter detailing my suspicions about Vincent, a letter I'd never actually mailed. Vincent intercepted it, I whispered, the pieces falling into place. He must have been going through my things. Rebecca nodded. Vivian received that envelope 2 weeks ago, forwarded anonymously. She called me immediately. But who would... We'll get to that, Rebecca said, checking her watch. Right now we need to move. Your husband has already been to the penthouse. He found your note. My stomach clenched. In my letter, I'd written only that I needed time away to think, that I would be in touch when I was ready. I'd said nothing about my suspicions or plans. Still, Vincent would know I'd escaped his carefully constructed cage. What about Camilla? I asked, thinking of my daughter. He's called her. She's on her way to the penthouse now. Rebecca stood. My car's out back. We have a lot to do today. I followed her to a nondescript sedan parked behind the cafe. As we drove, Rebecca explained what she'd discovered in the 3 weeks since Vivian had hired her. Your husband has been systematically draining accounts for nearly 2 years. Not just yours, but client funds, too. He's incredibly careful, uses shell companies, makes everything look like legitimate investments. The Pattersons, I said, remembering what Camilla had mentioned yesterday. He said there was an emergency with their accounts. Rebecca's gaze flicked to me in the rearview mirror. The Pattersons discovered discrepancies. Vincent's been scrambling to cover his tracks. We arrived at a luxury hotel on the outskirts of a neighbouring town. Inside a private suite, I found my sister Vivian waiting. "Marianne," she rushed forward, enveloping me in a tight hug. "I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. I should have known better." Tears stung my eyes as I returned her embrace. Vivian had always been my protector, my confidant. Vincent had managed to drive a wedge between us. But here she was when I needed her most. "There's someone else you need to meet," Rebecca said, checking her phone. "She should be here soon." "Who?" I asked, wiping away tears. "The person who sent the envelope to your sister." 20 minutes later, a knock at the door announced her arrival. Rebecca opened it and I gasped. "Mrs. Marianne," said Sophia Patterson, the wife of one of Vincent's wealthiest clients. We'd attended the same charity galas for years, but had never been close. "Sophia, you sent the letter." She nodded, taking a seat at the small table. "I've been suspicious of Vincent for months. Thomas, my husband, trusts him implicitly. But I noticed changes in our portfolio statements. When Thomas confronted him, Vincent always had explanations that sounded reasonable. So you started watching him," Rebecca said. "Yes. I followed him one afternoon and saw him checking your mail before you got home. He opened several letters, including one addressed to Vivian. The look on his face when he read it." Sophia shuddered. I knew something was wrong. "Sophia made copies of everything before sending the original to Vivian," Rebecca explained. "She's been our inside source ever since." My head was spinning. "But what about the Patterson emergency Camilla mentioned?" Sophia's expression darkened. "Thomas finally listened to me and requested a full audit of our accounts. Vincent's been trying to prevent that from happening." "We have evidence of embezzlement," Rebecca said, opening her laptop. "Not just from your accounts, but from at least 12 clients. The total is close to $3 million. I felt faint. "Where's the money?" "Some is in offshore accounts. Some was used to fund a secret life your husband's been building." "What do you mean?" Rebecca turned the laptop to face me. On the screen was a property listing for a beachfront home in Costa Rica. Purchased 6 months ago by an LLC that traced back to Vincent. She clicked to another tab. A woman in her 30s smiled back at me, her arm around Vincent's waist. They stood on the deck of what appeared to be the same Costa Rica house. "Her name is Vanessa Diaz," Rebecca said gently. "They've been seeing each other for almost 3 years." The room tilted. 3 years. While I was managing our household, maintaining my property portfolio, attending charity functions as the perfect banker's wife, Vincent had been planning his escape with a younger woman using stolen money. Our money. His client's money. "Does Camilla know?" I whispered. "We don't think so," Vivian said, squeezing my hand. "But there's more." Rebecca scrolled to another document. "Your mental decline is documented in medical records from Dr. Phillips." Dr. Phillips, a name I'd heard mentioned but had never actually met. "I've never seen this doctor." "That's because he doesn't exist," Rebecca said. "The medical license number is fake. The office address is a vacant property Vincent owns through another shell company. He created a false medical history for me," I said, the full extent of his betrayal hitting me. "But why? If he wanted to leave, he could have just divorced me." "Because of the prenuptial agreement you both signed," Vivian reminded me. "If he divorces you without cause, he gets nothing from your real estate portfolio or family trust fund. The trust fund my parents had left me, not massive, but substantial enough that Vincent had insisted on managing it throughout our marriage. I'd thought little about it over the years, trusting him completely. If you were declared mentally incompetent, however," Rebecca added, "he could be appointed your guardian, and your guardian would have complete control over everything." "And Camilla?" I asked. "Where does she fit into this?" Sophia looked uncomfortable. "Her fiancé, Adrian, he works for Vincent. Is he involved?" "We're not sure yet," Rebecca admitted. "But here's what we do know. 2 days ago, Vincent transferred a large sum to an account in Adrian's name." My phone, the burner phone, buzzed with a text message. I looked down and felt the blood drain from my face. "What is it?" Vivian asked, alarmed. I held up the phone. The message was from an unknown number, Mom. "Where are you?" "Dad found your note." "He's frantic." "Please come home. We just want to help you." "Camilla," I whispered. "She can't know about this phone," Rebecca said sharply. "How did she get the number?" Before I could answer, another message appeared. "If you don't come home by tonight, we'll have to report you missing." The police will consider you a danger to yourself because of your condition. Please, Mom, don't make this worse. I stared at the screen, realization dawning. Vincent. It's not Camilla. It's Vincent using her phone. He's threatening you and letting us know he's still one step ahead, Rebecca said grimly. The room fell silent as we all considered what this meant. Vincent knew I had a secret phone. He was monitoring Camilla's communications. And now he was using my love for my daughter to try to lure me back. Sophia was the first to speak. So what do we do now? Now, I said, finding strength in my anger, we set a trap of our own. The plan came together faster than I expected. Within hours, Rebecca had arranged everything we needed, making calls to contacts whose identities she kept confidential. Vivian and Sophia worked alongside her, each bringing their own strengths to our improvised war room. I watched them with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. 3 days ago, I'd been a prisoner in my own penthouse. Now I had allies, strong, capable women fighting for me. You need to respond to Vincent's text, Rebecca said, handing me back my burner phone. We need to buy time. I composed a careful message. I'm safe. Need space to think. Please don't involve police. We'll call tomorrow. Perfect, Rebecca nodded. Vague enough to keep him guessing, but reassuring enough that he won't panic and do something rash. What if he traces the phone? Vivian asked. He can't, Rebecca assured us. It's a prepaid phone purchased with cash, even if he has connections in the phone company. The most he could get is the general location when a text is sent, which is why we're sending it from here, Sophia added, and then moving to another location immediately. The phone buzzed almost instantly with Vincent's reply, Marianne, please. Camilla's worried sick. Whatever's bothering you, we can work through it. I love you. I felt a bitter laugh escape my throat. He's good, isn't he? If I didn't know better, I'd believe him. Sociopaths often are excellent manipulators, Rebecca said matter-of-factly. Their lack of empathy allows them to lie without the tells most people have. Is that what Vincent is? A sociopath? The thought that I'd spent 30 years with someone capable of such calculated deception made me feel hollow. Labels aren't important right now, Vivian said gently. What matters is stopping him. An hour later, we checked into a different hotel under Sophia's name, paying cash. The room was luxurious, a stark contrast to the modest accommodations in my original story, with marble surfaces and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. What about Camilla? I asked as we settled in. It was the question that had been gnawing at me all day. How do we make her see the truth? That's going to be the most difficult part, Rebecca admitted. She genuinely believes her father's story about your mental health. Direct confrontation likely won't work. She'll just see it as confirmation of your paranoia. We need evidence she can't dismiss, Sophia suggested. Something so irrefutable that even Vincent can't explain it away. The medical records, I said suddenly. Dr. Phillips doesn't exist, right? If we can show Camilla that the doctor diagnosing me isn't real. It's a start, Rebecca agreed. But Vincent could claim you're seeing a different doctor, or that you're confused about the name. What about the offshore accounts? Vivian suggested. Financial records proving he's been stealing. Again, he could claim those are legitimate investments you've forgotten about, Rebecca countered. Remember, in Camilla's mind, you're the one who's confused. Sophia had been quietly typing on her tablet. What about this? She turned the screen toward us, showing the photograph of Vincent and Vanessa in Costa Rica. Infidelity is harder to explain away, but easier to forgive, I said quietly. If it comes down to believing her father is unfaithful or her mother is mentally ill, which is easier for Camilla to accept. The room fell silent as we considered the problem. I think we're approaching this wrong, Rebecca finally said. We shouldn't be trying to convince Camilla directly. We need to create a situation where she discovers the truth herself. How? I asked. By using Vincent's playbook against him, Rebecca smiled grimly. He's been gaslighting you for months, making you question your own sanity. What if we turn the tables? Over the next few hours, our plan took shape. It was risky with multiple moving parts, but if it worked, Vincent would be exposed not just to Camilla, but to everyone who mattered. That night, I barely slept, my mind racing with everything I'd learned and everything still to come. Around 3 a.m., I slipped out of bed and sat by the window, watching the city lights twinkle below. Can't sleep, Vivian whispered, joining me. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, I admitted. How could I have been so blind? Vivian squeezed my hand. Because you loved him. Because you trusted him. That's not a weakness, Marianne. It's what makes you human. I let him isolate me from everyone, even you. And now we're fixing that. She looked at me intently. You're not alone anymore. Whatever happens, remember that. Morning came too quickly. Rebecca arrived at 7:00 a.m. with coffee and pastries, along with a middle-aged man she introduced as Detective Michael Torres. Michael is an old friend, she explained. He works in financial crimes. The detective nodded at me. Mrs. Marianne, Rebecca's filled me in. What your husband is doing crosses several legal boundaries. Embezzlement, fraud, identity theft with those fake medical records. But we need solid evidence. Yes, and we need to move carefully, I said. If Vincent suspects law enforcement involvement, he could transfer the remaining funds somewhere untraceable. Which is why today's meeting is so important, Rebecca added. Are you ready? I nodded, though my stomach was in knots. At 10 a.m., I would meet Vincent at a private dining room in an exclusive restaurant. My suggestion, sent via text late last night. He'd agreed immediately, clearly relieved I was willing to talk. Little did he know what I had planned. 2 hours later, I sat in the plush leather chair of the restaurant's most private dining room, exactly where I'd told Vincent to meet me. Rebecca and Detective Torres were positioned at nearby tables, pretending to be business associates conducting meetings. Vivian and Sophia waited in a car outside. I spotted Vincent before he saw me. He was scanning the restaurant, his customary confidence evident in his stride. When his eyes finally found me, relief washed over his features. Marianne, he said, approaching cautiously. Thank God you're all right. I remained seated, my hands folded in my lap. Hello, Vincent. He sat across from me, the expensive mahogany table between us. You had us worried sick. Camilla has been beside herself. Has she? I asked mildly. Or have you told her she should be worried? His expression flickered briefly before settling back into concerned husband mode. I don't understand. Why did you leave like that? If something's bothering you, we can talk about it. That's what I'm doing now, I said, talking about what's bothering me. I opened my purse and removed a manila envelope, placing it between us on the table. Vincent's eyes fixed on it, a hint of wariness crossing his face. What's this? Evidence, I met his gaze steadily, of everything you've been doing. The mask slipped for just a moment, a flash of anger quickly controlled. Marianne, you're confused. This is exactly why Camilla and I are concerned. Costa Rica is beautiful this time of year, isn't it? I interrupted. Especially that beachfront property you purchased 6 months ago. The one you visit with Vanessa. Vincent went very still. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. I nudged the envelope toward him. It's all in there. The property records, the transfers from client accounts, the fake medical records for Dr. Phillips, a doctor who doesn't exist. Who's been filling your head with these delusions? His voice had hardened. Is it Vivian? I know she's always been jealous of our relationship. Stop! My voice was quieter than I intended, but it cut through his words like a knife. It's over, Vincent. The lies, the manipulation, all of it. I know everything. His expression changed then, calculation replacing concern. He glanced around the restaurant, then leaned closer. What exactly do you want, Marianne? Money? A divorce? Name your price. I want my daughter back, I said simply. I want her to know the truth. Vincent laughed, a cold sound that sent shivers down my spine. Camilla believes what I tell her to believe. She thinks her mother is losing her mind. Who do you think she'll trust? The father who's been taking care of both of you, or the unstable woman who disappeared without warning? Let's find out, I said, reaching back into my purse. I pulled out my phone, not the burner, but a new one Rebecca had provided. I pressed a button and Vincent's voice filled the space between us. Camilla believes what I tell her to believe. She thinks her mother is losing her mind. As the recording continued, a figure stepped out from behind a decorative screen. Camilla stood frozen, her face pale as she listened to her father's words in his own voice. Vincent's eyes widened in genuine shock. Camilla, what are you doing here? She didn't answer him. Instead, she looked at me, tears streaming down her face. Mom, her voice broke on the word. Is it true, everything you've been saying? Before I could respond, Vincent was on his feet. Don't listen to her. This is exactly what I warned you about. She's manipulating you, using edited recordings to turn you against me. Is Dr. Phillips real? Camilla demanded, her voice stronger now. The doctor you said diagnosed Mom. Does he exist? Of course he exists. She's seen him multiple times. Then why? Camilla said, pulling out a piece of paper from her designer handbag. When I called the medical board this morning, did they tell me there's no Dr. Phillips with that license number in the entire state? Vincent's face contorted with rage, then quickly smoothed into a mask of paternal concern. It was fascinating and terrifying to witness his transformation, like watching an actor switch characters mid-scene. "Camilla, honey," he said, his voice soft and reasonable. "I don't know what your mother has told you, but you're misunderstanding the situation. Dr. Phillips might have recently changed practices or—" "Stop it," Camilla cut him off. Her hands were shaking, but her voice remained steady. "I called every Dr. Phillips in the state. None of them have ever treated Mom. The address you gave me for his office, it's an empty storefront. I watched my daughter with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. She had done her own investigating, something I hadn't anticipated. Despite everything Vincent had told her, some part of her had harbored doubts. Vincent's eyes darted between us, calculating his next move. This is absurd. I've been taking care of both of you for years. Why would I— Vanessa Diaz, I interrupted quietly. His head snapped toward me, eyes narrowing. What? Your girlfriend. The house in Costa Rica. The money you've been stealing from clients to fund your new life. I reached into the envelope and pulled out several photographs. Sophia Patterson has been very helpful. Sophia, Vincent's composure cracked. What does she have to do with this? She's been watching you, I explained, ever since she noticed discrepancies in her husband's accounts. Mom, Camilla whispered, her eyes fixed on the photos of Vincent and Vanessa. How long have you known? I suspected something was wrong for months, but I only learned the full truth yesterday. I took a deep breath. Your father has been gaslighting me, Camilla, making me and you believe I was losing my mind, when really he was stealing money and planning to leave. Vincent suddenly lunged for the envelope, but Detective Torres appeared beside him, grasping his arm firmly. I wouldn't do that, Mr. Vincent, he said, flashing his badge. The color drained from Vincent's face. Who are you? Detective Michael Torres. Financial crimes. He released Vincent's arm but positioned himself between us. We have some questions about certain irregularities in your client's accounts. Vincent straightened his jacket, his lawyer mask sliding into place. I'm not discussing anything without my attorney present. That's your right, Torres nodded. But we have enough to get warrants for your financial records, your penthouse and your office. Perhaps you'd like to cooperate now, make things easier on yourself. This is ridiculous, Vincent snarled. A misunderstanding blown out of proportion by my mentally unstable wife. Camilla stepped forward, placing herself at my side. Dad, I saw the medical records you showed me. I checked every detail. They're fake. You lied to me. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Vincent's face as he realized his daughter was slipping away from his influence. Camilla, please. Everything I've done for us, for our future. By stealing? She demanded. By lying? By making me think my own mother was going crazy? You don't understand, he said desperately. Your mother's real estate portfolio and family money are tied up in that trust. I had to. Had to what? I asked quietly. Convince everyone I was incompetent so you could control my inheritance while running off with your girlfriend? Rebecca approached, standing beside Detective Torres. Mr. Vincent, we've been building a case against you for weeks. We have documentation of transfers from client accounts to offshore entities you control. We have evidence of the falsified medical records. And as of this morning, we have testimony from Vanessa Diaz herself. Vincent's head jerked up. What? She's been very cooperative, Rebecca continued. Especially after learning you've been embezzling money. She thought you were wealthy from legitimate business. You got to Vanessa? His voice was barely audible. Costa Rican authorities picked her up this morning, Detective Torres said. Seems she was quite surprised to learn about your existing family arrangements. Vincent's shoulders slumped momentarily before he straightened again, his eyes calculating. Whatever you think you have, it won't hold up. I'm not saying another word without my lawyer. That's fine, Torres said, nodding to a uniformed officer who was approaching. Vincent, you're under arrest for suspicion of fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft. You have the right to remain silent. As the officer led Vincent away, I turned to find Camilla staring at me, her expression a mixture of confusion, pain, and dawning horror. Mom, I'm so sorry, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I believed him. I helped him control you. Her voice broke on a sob. I pulled her into my arms, holding her as she cried against my shoulder. You didn't know, sweetheart. He manipulated both of us, but I should have seen it. The way he was so insistent about managing your medication, about keeping you isolated for your own good. I was so stupid. No, I said firmly, drawing back to look into her eyes. You trusted your father. That's what daughters do. But you also started questioning things, didn't you? You checked on Dr. Phillips yourself. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Adrian told me I should trust Dad completely. That questioning the doctor would just upset you unnecessarily. But something felt wrong. She paused, her expression hardening. Adrian, did he know? Was he part of this? We're not sure yet, I admitted. But Detective Torres will be looking into that too. Vivian and Sophia approached us cautiously. Camilla looked surprised to see my sister. Aunt Vivian, what are you doing here? Helping your mum, Vivian said simply, giving Camilla a gentle hug. And this is Sophia Patterson. She's been instrumental in uncovering what your father was doing. Camilla stared at Sophia with dawning recognition. Mrs. Patterson, you and Mr. Patterson were at our penthouse for dinner last month. Sophia nodded. That's when I became certain something was wrong. I saw how your father treated your mother. The constant corrections, the little comments undermining her. It reminded me of my first husband. She touched Camilla's arm gently. Abusers don't always use their fists, dear. Camilla flinched at the word abuser, but didn't contradict it. What happens now? She asked instead. Now we go home, I said firmly. We reclaim our lives. The days that followed were a blur of police interviews, meetings with financial investigators, and uncomfortable revelations. Adrian, it turned out, had indeed been aware of at least some of Vincent's schemes. The money transferred to his account was intended as a handling fee for helping maintain the fiction of my mental decline. Camilla was devastated. I was engaged to someone who was helping Dad gaslight you, she said one evening as we sat in the living room of our penthouse. A space that felt both familiar and strange after everything that had happened. He manipulated you too, I reminded her, though I couldn't help the anger that surged when I thought of how Adrian had encouraged her to doubt me, to report my every word and action to Vincent. I've been such a fool, she whispered. We both were, I admitted, but now we know better. A week after Vincent's arrest, Camilla moved back to the penthouse temporarily to help me sort through the financial mess he'd left behind. With Rebecca and Detective Torres' help, we were gradually untangling Vincent's web of deceit. Some of the money had been recovered, though much was still missing. There's something I need to show you, Camilla said one afternoon, her expression serious. She led me to her father's home office, a room I'd been avoiding. From a hidden compartment in his mahogany desk drawer, she pulled out a small black notebook. I found this yesterday, she explained, placing it in my hands. I think you should see it. I opened the notebook, my blood running cold as I read the first page. In Vincent's precise handwriting was a detailed list. Marianne's behaviours to document forgetfulness, move keys, wallet, phone regularly. Confusion, change plans without telling her. Then act concerned when she's unaware. Paranoia, mention conversations that never happened. Each page that followed contained dated entries. A meticulous record of how he'd systematically gaslighted me for months. The final pages held something even more chilling, a timeline for having me declared legally incompetent, with Camilla named as co-guardian alongside Vincent. The last entry was dated just 3 days before I'd left C, fully committed to the plan. Appointment with Judge Morris scheduled for next month. M. Showing increasing signs of distress. Perfect timing. After guardianship secured, phase 2 begins. I closed the notebook, my hands trembling, not with fear now, but with anger. What was phase 2? Camilla asked quietly. I looked up at my daughter, seeing the guilt and pain etched in her features. She had been a pawn in Vincent's game, just as I had. I don't know, I said truthfully, but I think we need to find out. 6 months after Vincent's arrest, I sat in the courthouse waiting room, smoothing my hands over the fabric of my new designer dress. The preliminary hearings had dragged on for months, but today would bring closure. Vincent's plea deal was being finalized. Nervous? Camilla asked, taking the seat beside me. She looked professional and poised in her tailored suit, though I could see the tension in her shoulders. A little, I admitted, but ready for this to be over. Detective Torres approached us, his expression serious but satisfied. Mrs. Marianne, Camilla, the judge has accepted the plea agreement. Your husband will serve 7 years for fraud and embezzlement, with additional time for identity theft and falsifying medical records. Relief washed over me. Thank you, Detective, for everything. You did the hard part, he said with a gentle smile. Standing up to him took real courage. After he left, Camilla squeezed my hand. I still can't believe we found out what phase 2 was. I nodded grimly. The investigation had uncovered insurance policies Vincent had taken out on me, policies that would pay millions upon my death. The timing of these policies, coupled with his research into undetectable poisons found on his laptop, painted a chilling picture of what might have happened had I not escaped when I did. "Let's not think about that today," I said firmly. "Today we focus on moving forward." Rebecca joined us carrying a folder. "The forensic accountants have traced nearly 80% of the missing funds," she reported. "Most of the clients will recover the majority of their investments." "And Vanessa?" Camilla asked. "Cooperating fully in exchange for immunity. She claims she had no knowledge of Vincent's crimes." Rebecca shrugged skeptically. "It doesn't matter," I said. "She's out of our lives now." As we left the courthouse, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The nightmare wasn't completely over. There would still be civil suits, financial matters to resolve, and emotional wounds to heal. But the worst was behind us. "Mom," Camilla said as we walked to the car, "there's something I need to tell you." The serious tone in her voice made me pause. "What is it, sweetheart?" "I've been offered a job with Detective Torres' department in victim advocacy, working with people who've experienced financial abuse and fraud." Pride swelled in my chest. "That's wonderful." "I want to help people like us," she continued, her eyes bright with purpose. "Make sure they know they're not alone, help them navigate the system." She hesitated. "But it means I won't be moving back to the penthouse permanently." "Of course," I said, though a small part of me had hoped she would stay longer. "You need your own life, your own space." "What about you?" she asked. "Will you be okay in that penthouse alone?" "There are so many memories." I smiled. "Actually, I'm selling the penthouse." "You are?" She looked surprised. "But you've lived there for decades." "Too many ghosts," I explained. "Besides, I found a smaller place closer to Vivian. It's time for a fresh start." Later that evening, Camilla and I invited Vivian, Rebecca, and Sophia for dinner at the penthouse, one of the last meals we'd share there before the sale was finalized. As I set the table in the dining room where Vincent and I had hosted countless dinner parties over the years, I reflected on how much had changed. "Need help?" Sophia asked, entering with a bottle of wine. "Just finishing up," I said, arranging the silverware. "Thank you again for everything. If you hadn't noticed Vincent tampering with my mail..." She waved away my thanks. "I know what it's like to have someone make you doubt yourself. My first husband was a master at it." She set the wine down, her expression thoughtful. "You know, when I first met you at those charity galas, I always thought you seemed constrained somehow. Like you were holding yourself back." "I was," I admitted. "Vincent always had very specific ideas about how I should behave, what I should say. After a while, it became second nature to filter everything through his expectations." "And now?" she asked. I smiled. "Now I'm discovering who I am without those filters. It's liberating." The doorbell rang, announcing Vivian and Rebecca's arrival. Soon the dining room was filled with conversation and laughter, a stark contrast to the tense, controlled dinners of the past. "A toast," Vivian said, raising her glass as we finished the main course. "To my brave sister, who refused to be silenced." "To Mom," Camilla added, her eyes shining with tears and pride, "who taught me what real strength looks like." "To all of you," I countered, looking around at these women who had formed an unexpected circle of support around me, "for helping me find my voice again." After dinner, as we moved to the living room for coffee, I noticed Camilla lingering by the family photos on the mantelpiece. I joined her, looking at the carefully curated images of our perfect family life. "It's strange," she said softly. "Looking at these now, I can see how controlled everything was. How Dad positioned us exactly how he wanted. Made sure every picture told the story he wanted to tell. The perfect family," I murmured. "I'm so sorry I didn't see through it sooner," she said, turning to me. "When you first started questioning things, I just accepted Dad's explanation that you were confused." I should have. "Stop," I interrupted gently. "We've been through this. You were manipulated too. The important thing is that when you had reason to doubt, you investigated. You found the truth." She nodded, though I could see the guilt still lingered. "Have you thought about what you'll do next besides moving?" "Actually, yes," I smiled, feeling a flutter of excitement. "I'm going back to school." "School?" Camilla looked surprised. "For my master's in art history. I started the program before I met your father, but never finished." It had been one of the first things Vincent had subtly discouraged after our marriage, suggesting it was impractical, that I should focus on building our home instead. "Mom, that's amazing." Camilla hugged me tightly. You'll be brilliant. Later that night, after everyone had gone, I sat alone in my bedroom, looking at the empty spaces where Vincent's things had once been. The police had taken some items as evidence I'd donated or discarded the rest. My phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it. Marianne, it's David Patterson. Sophia gave me your number. I heard what happened with Vincent. Would you like to meet for coffee sometime, just as friends? No pressure. David Patterson, Sophia's brother-in-law. A quiet, thoughtful man I'd met briefly at charity events over the years. A widower who taught literature at the local university. I remembered his kind eyes, his genuine interest when I'd mentioned my love of art history. I found myself smiling as I typed a response, "Coffee sounds wonderful. How about Tuesday?" Setting the phone down, I moved to the window and looked out at the city lights. Tomorrow would bring more meetings with lawyers, more paperwork, more steps in the long process of disentangling my life from Vincent's web of deceit. But for the first time in years, I felt truly free. 3 weeks later, I stood in the empty penthouse for the last time. The furniture had been sold or moved to my new apartment. The walls were bare where family photos had once hung. My footsteps echoed in the vacant rooms. I walked through each space not with sadness but with a sense of completion. This penthouse had been both prison and home to me. Now it would belong to a young family eager to create their own memories within its walls. In the kitchen where I'd prepared thousands of meals, where Vincent had first begun criticizing my forgetfulness when I couldn't find items he'd deliberately misplaced. I placed a small envelope on the marble counter. Inside was a note for the new owners, wishing them happiness and harmony in their new home. My phone buzzed with a text from Camilla, waiting outside whenever you're ready. Everything okay? I typed back, just saying goodbye. Be right out. As I walked toward the front door, I caught sight of my reflection in the hallway mirror, the last item still hanging on the walls. I paused, studying the woman looking back at me. My hair had more silver than it had 6 months ago, and fine lines had deepened around my eyes, evidence of both stress and newfound laughter. But there was something else there, too, a steadiness, a quiet confidence that had been missing for so long I'd forgotten it was ever part of me. Goodbye, I said softly to the empty penthouse, to the woman I'd been, to the life I was leaving behind. I stepped outside into the bright spring sunshine where Camilla waited by her car. Beside her stood Vivian, Rebecca, and Sophia, my unlikely circle of warriors. Ready? Camilla asked, taking my bag. I looked back at the penthouse one last time, then turned to the women who had helped me reclaim my life. Ready, I said, and walked toward my future without looking back.